We're here for serious business. And we have in our midst today one of our revered church father, a scholar, and I believe he has taught some of you in Vining, because he was the former dean of Vining, and now the Lord Bishop of our diocese. Not only that, after Vining, he served as the General Secretary of the Church of Nigeria before he became the Lord Bishop of our diocese. I'm talking of no other person than the Right Reverend Stephen Fagbemi, who is going to give us this lecture this morning. And I pray that God himself will speak to us. And it will be impactful to our life and to our ministry. So, Baba, you are welcome to the Diocese of Ife. Please come forward, sir.
Praise ye the Lord. May we bow our heads for a word of prayer. Heavenly Father, we are grateful unto you that in your own mercy and kindness you have called us out of so many people. You have given us the privilege of serving in your vineyard. We acknowledge, O God, that this is not by our power, it is indeed by your loving kindness. And for all that you have been to us in times past, we rejoice in you. Thank you for the Diocese of Ife. Thank you for the leadership of our bishop. And thank you for the ministries of all these men of God. Father, we are grateful indeed because you are the Lord who reigns over the affairs of this diocese. To you, God, be all the glory in the name of Jesus. Lord, as we go into this session, we ask that you will direct us. Amen. You will lead us. Amen. You will speak that we may hear your voice. Amen. Lord, we ask that the clarity that we need, you will give unto us. Amen. And Lord, where we may be confused, you will help to clarify our reflection. Amen. And we pray that what we hear today would inspire us to go further as we serve you. Amen. Blessed be your holy name. In Jesus' mighty name, we have prayed. Thank you. Please do be seated. We give thanks to God Almighty for counting us all worthy to be alive on this day and to be part of this gathering. And we thank God because we are here in the 7th month of the year 2023. And for all that the Lord has been to us, we return the praise unto him. I'd like to express my profound thanks and appreciation to my Lord, the Bishop of Ife, the Right Reverend Akinlade, for extending this invitation to me. It's a rare privilege, and I do not take it for granted. My Lord, I pray for you and Mama that as we continue to lead the people of God in this diocese, grace of God will increase for you. Amen. The strength that you need day by day, the Lord will give unto you. Amen. And I pray that the health of body, soul, and mind that you need to function faithfully, the Lord will give unto you. Amen. I want to thank you very much, sir, for the opportunity to be part of this clergy school. Please permit me also to greet all our brethren. It's good to be here with you, to see you. So many faces that I hadn't seen for quite some time. I remember those from Archbishop Vining College, and it's good that I see them here again. And it's also a delight for me to be able to see some of my very old friends, people that we have been together for years, and now they are also serving here. I want to take note in particular of Brother Richard Obafemi. He used to be our football captain in those days. I don't know whether he's still able to play football now. Oh, he's going to play today? So he has to try and do well. So it's good that we're able to see and to meet again. Brothers, it's a pleasure and joy to be in your midst. And I pray that that which the Lord has entrusted into our hands, into our care, the Lord will help us and we shall handle it effectively in the name of Jesus. Amen. I have to apologize that my lecture is not in the book that you have, but I can assure you that you'll be able to follow, and we'll also create an interactive section so that we can also ask or discuss as we go on. The reflection today is on effective management of God's business. Effective management of God's business. And the text that brings our thoughts together is actually taken from Titus chapter 1, verse 5, even though I will be dealing more extensively on other texts. But let me just read that as we open together. Titus chapter 1, verse 5. This is why I left you in Crete, so that you might put what remained into order and appoint elders in every town as I directed. This is why I left you in Crete, so that you might put what remained into order and appoint elders in every town as I directed. And as if to say that I have left you there so that you might continue with the business and, of course, take it to a greater height. So if anything, the first we must bear in mind is that to talk about effective management of God's business is to throw the challenge of wanting to move the work forward. Now, the topic is a very apt one, and I believe is deserving of frequent reflection by workers in God's vineyard, lest anyone is found to be adrift or wanting in his calling. It is challenging to note that many in ministry today have become either slothful, distracted, or they have become wolves who prey and destroy the flock. In fact, some people have relaxed so much because they think we have been in ministry for a long time. Some will feel that this is an opportunity for me to just sit down and possibly enjoy. And it means that people like that have a wrong understanding of what they have been called to do. Because this one, once you begin, you have to sustain until the very end. I pray that we shall not be distracted. Amen. In some ministries, it is difficult now even to recognize the place of Jesus in their calling, because they have become the focus of the ministry. They have become the Lord of the ministry. And therefore, instead of managing God's business in God's own way, they are now managing it as if it were something they had created by themselves and for themselves. Their focus is simply to lord it over the flock rather than serve them. Their interest is in what to eat rather than what to give. So this subject becomes a very important one for us, to reflect once again about effective management of God's business. And Paul has helped us to summarize it in that one verse. And I want to just quickly give a bit of definition of some of the key terms that we are talking about here. Not as if you didn't know that before, but at least to reiterate the importance of this particular one. The first I want to reflect on is management, or being a manager. It is actually from being a manager that you talk about management. What a manager does is to manage, isn't it? So if you are a manager, then you are in the process of management, managing a situation. So the process of managing, although the manager himself is a person who manages an organization or a group of staff, very important. And for us, if you are talking about the ministry, we are talking about those who now have been called to manage either workers in the vineyard or manage the church organization, manage the people that you have there. And there's no way you can talk about the church without talking about management. And if you are talking about management, you're also talking about a manager. So a person who is in charge of a business affairs, you might even say, is in charge of the sports player or actor or performer. I mean, you know that those who are involved in sports nowadays, they have managers. Abi? So the managers have a very important role. Many times even to determine whether this is a match you should even contemplate or not. Whether this match is going to be successful or whether it's going to yield enough dividends that therefore you have to talk about. Many times it is the manager that even signs the agreement on behalf of their team. So the manager has a very important role. And I would think as we are looking at that, I want you to begin to think about your own role as a manager in the vineyard of God. Number 2, effective management. That is to say, we are not just talking about management, as it were, important as it is, but that has been qualified by the word effective. Somebody say effective. And I want to ask of you, are you effective where God has placed you? God has used the Lord Bishop to put you somewhere to share with him in the ministry. Are you effective where God has placed you? I heard the bishop was talking about evaluation this morning when I came in. And that's a very effective, very important one. We're going to talk about that a little later. Because evaluation is critical to effective leadership, effective management. So, effective is talking about producing a desired or intended result. So, you must be asking, is this management of the work that I do in God's name producing the desired result? It is effective when you see that the results are forthcoming. Number 2, effective is to exist in fact, although not formally acknowledged as such. To be effective is to be impactful, to have impact where the Lord has placed you. Before I came in here this morning, I received a couple of telephone calls. But one of them in particular was talking to me about the fact that I had transferred one clergyman from their parish. And he said, yes, we cannot ask the bishop not to transfer him. But actually, our main interest has not been addressed. What is his main interest? Or what is their main interest, according to him? Their main interest is that the man who is in charge of that place should be transferred. That is their main interest. And I'd asked, why? where they have so many reasons. Apparently for them, they believe he has overstayed, and they believe that the ministry is no longer bringing result. It's no longer bringing fruit. So you can see the problems that we have as bishops. So people will be calling us. And so if everybody is in the same category, so who am I going to put there? Where am I going to place them? So effective management is very important. So is your ministry impactful where you are, while you're transferring somebody and people say, hey, please, we want him to stay. You are transferring somebody or you have not even transferred him. They are pleading with you, please don't delay, transfer him. Number 3, business is another word that is used there. Business. Well, business is a regular occupation or trade or work that is to be done or matters that are to be attended to or a person's concern. So that is business. A person's concerns, and of course in this case, we have also qualified it. It is not just my business or your business. It is business of God. Whose business? So, if he's talking about God's business, we are talking about God, the creator of the universe and mankind. We are talking about God, the savior of humanity, and God, who is the comforter and sustainer of God's people. That way, the Trinity is complete, isn't it? And simply indicates that the entire business does not belong to us who have been called to manage. We are at best trustees. We are operating on behalf of somebody. And therefore, whatever operation has to be consistent with the terms under which that business has been set up. Are you following me? So it's very important that as we talk about effective management of God's business, we realize that it is not any man's business, but it is God's business. So the importance and the serious implications must not be lost on us. That here we are treading on a very delicate ground. That our desire is not simply to please any man, not simply to satisfy ourselves, but to actually satisfy the owner of the business. And that owner is God. My prayer for you is that wherever the Lord is placing you, grace to be effective manager of his business, the Lord will give unto you. Amen. So Titus chapter 1 verse 5 highlights that particular importance that Paul had left Titus in Crete for a particular assignment. And the assignment is in the interest of the church. He had not left him behind so that he could stay back and enjoy himself. He said, this is the reason I left you behind, so that you may put in order all that is remaining to be done. So the business of the church is not ended. God had used Paul to start, and he had worked with his associates, and he had now chosen that in moving forward, we cannot abandon God's business here. Rather, we must put somebody there to continue the work. And if you like, that is why you and I are involved here. God has put us where we are so that the work may continue in his name. My prayer is that under our watch, this work will not be messed up. You didn't hear me very well. I said, under our watch, this work will not be messed up. Amen. You know, management becomes very important where there is growth. Where there is growth. If you look at the Acts of the Apostles, chapter 6, you will find that initially, once everybody was together and the church itself was limited, there wasn't much worry. But the need arose, when you look at chapter 6, for us to have the deacons to be appointed when the church started growing. To the point that even the Hellenists, the Gentiles, the women were beginning to grow in number, and there were concerns. Some were beginning to say that, look, we don't have what should really get to us. Some people are benefiting from this, but it's not reaching us. And quickly the apostles recognized that we have to look for how to begin to manage. And that was why the election of the deacons came into being. So we need people who actually can help us manage and distribute, even and support the ministry of the widows, while we will continue with the ministry of the word. Very important. So you will find there that, number one, the manager, if you like, is able to discern. The manager needs to be able to discern the needs of the people he has been called to lead. It's a poor manager who cannot recognize when the game has changed. It's a poor manager who cannot recognize when the season has changed. It's a poor manager who cannot recognize that the desires of the people have changed, and therefore we must look for a way to meet it. So the disciples recognized that straight away, and then they decided that some people must now be elected and given the responsibility of doing that. So the manager has a role to discern the spirit of the time, the mood of the time. So Paul left him behind in Crete so that he can begin to put into place what was left and had to be done. So he said that you may put into order and then appoint elders in every town as I directed. The second thing to note there is that orderliness and organization of the people was a very important role that Titus had to play in that church, to order them. But he also recognized that Titus alone could not actually achieve that. So it was important for Titus to begin to look for the right people to work with him. Are you with me? Very important. If you're talking about effective manager of God's business, we need also the grace to be able to discern the right people who can work with us. And if you look to the rest of that chapter, you will find that even Paul went further to begin to describe them. People of high integrity. People who were sincere enough to support his work. So I suggest to you as well that to be effective manager of God's business, you need the grace of God to be able to discern the right people to work with you wherever the Lord has placed you at any point. I tell you that it will be a tragedy to have the wrong people to work with. People that you cannot trust. People who are not sincere. People who would only be involved in the politics of the church, and yet they will not add value to anything that you're doing. Because come to think of it, the truth of the matter is that as a pastor, you cannot do it all alone. So it is important to recognize those who can support that ministry and work with you. And this becomes even more important in our age, because once the church is growing, then you need people who will be Bible study leaders, effective Bible study leaders. You need people who can support your visitation ministry. You need people who can be there to help lead prayers. You need people that you can delegate when your hands are full of activities, and yet they can be very sincere and deliver accordingly. May the Lord help us. Amen. So this was part of what Titus was encouraged to consider, that the kind of people that he will put there will be people who can help with this work. Somebody we spoke with not long ago, I was asking about a particular clergyman. And I said, is there a particular, does he have any problem in the parish where he was before? Why was he moved from there? So the man said, I don't know whether he has any problem. I don't know whether he has any problem. Are you following me? But my own observation is that in that church, in that parish, he does everything by himself. That from the day he got there, he did not recognize the wardens. He did not recognize Bible study leaders. He did not recognize prayer leaders. Everything, he was the only one that can do it. And eventually, people began to grumble. They began to murmur. And can you imagine if he was the only one doing all those things, what will happen the day he could not be available to do it? What will happen if he suddenly took ill? So it's very important that to be effective manager of God's business, we must look beyond ourselves. That many times we also have got to see ourselves as effective facilitators. Are you with me? When I was a parish priest, I used to make it my aim that within the first 3 months of my arrival in a new parish, I hardly accept any invitation outside. Because I wanted to take the time to ensure that I put in place everything I needed to work there. And many times it will mean identifying gifts, identifying people that you can really train and use to serve. So that thereafter, if you had to be out, then you'll be sure that this man can do the job that you expect him to do. I tell you that God's business is a very serious one. And we must never take it for granted or take it lightly. So it's not something you can just leave anybody anywhere to just handle. Because it is not too difficult to destroy the work. In fact, somebody, through one day's sermon, can destroy the job of many years. So the more reason why you have to be careful who is even coming to speak. Because once they have destroyed it, it may take you years to build it up. May the Lord help us. I want us to read Luke's Gospel chapter 19. Because I believe that that passage actually helps us to amplify this particular discussion. Luke's Gospel chapter 19. And looking at it from verse 11.
He went on to tell them the parable, because he was near Jerusalem. And the people thought that the kingdom of God was going to appear at once. He said, the man of local west went to a distant country, had himself appointed king, and then he returned. So he called 10 of his servants and gave them 10 dinars. 2 days' money to work, he said, until I come back. But his subjects hated him and sent a delegation that time to say, we don't want this man to be our king. He was made king, however, and returned home. Then he sent for the servant to whom he had given the money, in order to find out what they had gained with it. The first one came and said, Sir, your mina has earned 10 more. Well done, my good servant. His master replied, because you have been trustworthy in a very small matter, take charge of 10 cities. Then the second came and said, Sir, your mina has earned 5 more. His master answered, you take charge of 5 cities. Then another servant came and said, Sir, here is your mina. I have kept it laid away in a piece of cloth. I was afraid of you, because you are a hard man. You take out what you did not put in, and reap what you did not sow. His master replied, I will judge you by your own words. You wicked servant. Did you, that I am a hard man, taking out what I did not put in, and reaping what I did not sow? Why then didn't you put my money on deposit, so that when I came back, I could have collected it with interest? Then he said to those standing by, take this mina away from him, and give it to the one who has 10 minas. Sir, they said, he already has 10. He replied, I tell you that to everyone who has, more will be given. But as for the one who has nothing, even what he has will be taken away. But those enemies of mine who did not want me to be a king over them, bring them here and kill them in front of me. This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God. Thank you very much for that. Jesus always used parable to underline important kingdom matters for his disciples. And a parable is an earthly story that is used to underline a heavenly message. And that's exactly what Jesus has done here. But the context of this chapter is a very important one. This context suggests the admission into God's kingdom for the purpose of the glorification of his name alone. From the very start, you will find that Zacchaeus had just made effort to secure Jesus' attention in his attempt to get into the kingdom. That's what he had just done. Which suggests that to find a place in the kingdom requires deliberate decision to enter, especially in response to the good news being preached or shared. So you find that at the start, Zacchaeus made every effort to want to encounter Jesus. And at the end, when he had the opportunity, he was more than ready to even declare all that he had done, and now wanting to be assured of his salvation. So the kingdom we talk about is one that calls for self-examination. It is one that calls for repentance. And so Zacchaeus had to make restitution. To say, look, what I used to do, I no longer do. Look, even if I had taken money from people, I had returned it in more than one-fold. And it's important for us that as we reflect on this, we talk about ourselves as managers. He who comes into equity must come with clean hands. So if Zacchaeus was going to have the opportunity of indeed coming into the kingdom, then it was important for him to come even right with an open mind. No wonder the psalmist says, who shall ascend the hill of the Lord? He who has clean hands and a pure heart. A very important one. It was immediately after this parable that what we now have here in chapter 19 from verse 11 comes up. And this comes after this parable is that of the triumphal entry into Jerusalem of Jesus Christ our Lord. An indication that in the midst of all that was happening, Jesus had a calling that must be fulfilled as King and Messiah. A king and also a Messiah that will suffer. No wonder in verse 38 it says, blessed is the King who comes in the name of the Lord. So coming in the name of the Lord must be instructive for whatever is to be done in ministry. Thank you. Coming in the name of the Lord. So ours as managers must come with an understanding that it is in the name of the Lord that we are running this business. And that is a very, very important one. So this calls for sincerity and genuineness of intention. Regrettably, so many today in our world are involved in ministry, but they are doing it in their name. Even though they tell people it's in the name of God, but actually when you see what they are doing, it is far from being in the name of God. May God have mercy on us. May God have mercy on us. I told some people recently, I said, the tragedy of what we have at this time is that there is a lot of deceit out there. There are many people who now find it convenient to do things in the name of Jesus, but actually they are herbalists. Babalawo ni wọ́n. Babalawo nínú aṣọ funfun. Babalawo nínú aṣọ àlùfáà. And yet people will be following them because they think they are doing it in the name of the Lord. Just about 2 weeks ago, it was reported to me by one of our clergy that in their parish, one man had only just recently arrived within that environment who claims to be a pastor. And then he had done it in such a way that people are flocking the place. People were going. You know, it was that bad that people had to pay 1,000 naira even for consultation fee. And regrettably, he didn't know until later that even some members of his church were also going there. But those people were coming to hire the mattress that the church was giving out. They would pay some money and hire the mattress as if they had an event to use the mattress. But actually it was to go to that place. So and sleep there until the time will come for them to be attended to. And I wondered whether some people have been praying. And very quickly, soon after that, the news came that one woman had just given birth in that town. And this pastor went there to collect the placenta. And thankfully, on this occasion, he had been caught. What do you do with the placenta of a baby? That is not your baby. It's not your wife. And I didn't know, the first person to talk to me was the registrar of my diocese. He said, I should tell my people that they be careful to go and pray for people who are pregnant or who are delivering babies. I said, why is that a problem? He said, they just discovered now, and somebody has been brought to court. A man who is now struggling to defend whether he took placenta or not. But eventually they found out that actually he was the one who took the placenta. So which means that that is the kind of thing that he has been doing, which has been getting people to flock to him. And yet, people have been going to see him, believing that they have been going to see a pastor in the name of Christ. Is that in the name of Christ? What about you? Do you have placenta in your church? You take people's placenta. May God deliver us. So, in whose name have you come? In whose name is your ministry being exercised, and on whose behalf? This is very important. If you are talking about effective management of God's business, in whose name? Are you doing it out of desperation so that you can get people to come? Therefore, you have to go beyond what God has ordered, and then you look elsewhere. So, but why wear cassock and claim to people that you are a man of God? Let's know where you belong. So this calls the question how faithful and effective one is in exercising the ministry in the name of God. Incidentally, within this context, Jesus is determined to establish and maintain what is right for the service of God by driving away from the temple those who had engaged in unholy transactions within the temple. That's what you'll find later in chapter 19, verses 45 and 46, when it says, my house shall be called a house of prayer. So literally, he drew them out because of the ungodliness in the transaction that they are undertaking. So now, the particular section that we are looking at verse 11 onwards, we find that the master went on a journey. He went on a journey. And on this journey, as he was going, he said to the disciples, calling 10 of his servants, and gave them 10 minas, and said to them, engage in business until I come. Very important for us, that in delivering effective management of God's business, we must be mindful of the fact that we are standing in the gap. We are standing for the owner of the business. So he said, occupy, engage in business until I come. So what you and I have is that particular command, engage in business until I come. Let's not forget that, a very important one. And so you find that that's the same kind of thing that Paul was saying to Titus. This is the reason I have left you there. That will suggest that actually Titus was not the final authority, was he? Somebody left him there. Who did? This is why I left you in Crete, so that you might put what remained into order and appoint elders in every town as I declared. Suggesting also that Paul could also call Titus and say, how have you done? What have you done with the job I asked you to do? And I think it works very well within our context, that the bishop gives you the assignment. Abi? The bishop sends you there, and then he gives you the authority. Take this authority, which is both mine and... Oh, very good. You remember it is mine and dying. Abi? And not dying first. So it says, take this authority, which is both mine and dying. So that, of course, will remind you that surely this is not just your own. You are sharing it. So the person who is asking you to share, to take it, can also call you and say, look, where is the thing? What have you done with it? Very important. Incidentally, that's the same way the bishop puts you in the chair and asks you to sit there. So when you are sitting there, you are also sitting on his behalf. You are also sitting in the name of God. So every time we perform, we must be mindful of the fact that we are doing it on behalf of God. And we are doing it on the honor and the trust that the bishop has given us. So this man says, occupy until I come. So there shall be a time to report back. And I want us to look at this more closely. Number one is that we have the privilege of service. Privilege of service. There are so many people are out there who would in fact like to be where you are, but they have not been called. Although some people call themselves. But in your case, you have been called, and God has given you the business, the responsibility. Before I forget, let me just, as I remind you about the fact that the bishop has given you the authority which is both mine and dying. You know that sometimes when transfer takes place, some people don't want to go on transfer. Have you heard of that before? Have you heard of that before? Even some of you, I know you think about that. There's sometimes when the bishop says it's time to go on transfer, you don't like to go. And if at all possible, you would ask some lay people to go and begin to persuade the bishop so that he can change his mind. Somebody some few years ago in his diocese was transferred by his bishop. And he didn't want to go on the account that the people loved him. Praise the Lord. The people did what? They loved him. And he enjoyed that. And he kept at, motivating the people to go and speak to the bishop. So they spoke to the bishop, and after some time, the bishop said, no, I have transferred him, let him go. The people said, no, we will lock the church. Whoever is coming will not accept him. He was the one behind all those, He didn't want to go. So the bishop mentioned to me that this is what, he was experiencing. He asked for my advice. I said, well, from what you have told me, I would just say, let him stay there. So the bishop said, I should let him stay. I said, let this one let him stay. He said, the people love him, Abi. Let him stay. So I think for some reason the bishop reluctantly took my advice and allowed him to stay. So let him stay now. They want him. Let him stay. And 3 months after that time, the people came back to the bishop. Said, come and take your man. We don't want him again. I said, the man they loved 3 months ago, now they are asking the bishop to take him. So the bishop said, it's your man. You love him. Keep him. They said, no, we don't want him. He said, keep him. You wanted him to stay. Keep him. I have no place for him. At the end of the day, the man came to the bishop. The bishop said, no, you are their pastor. Shebi, you took yourself there. Then find your way. I have nowhere else to put you. So now that they have rejected him, so the bishop sent another man there. And then he was left in the cold. At the end of the day, he had to, leave that place and find his way elsewhere, outside our diocese. So the bishop said, well, it's not my fault this time, it's not my pride. I said, that's what I told you the other time now. Shebi, they loved him. You gave him, this is the authority which is both mine and thine. So the bishop is now led to say, my friend, time up, move elsewhere. And you still want to stay there? So if we are going to be effective managers of God's business, we must always be mindful that we are not the final authority. The authority belongs to God. And thankfully, within our structure, the bishop holds the authority in the name of God, and he can lead us. So out of so many, we have been privileged to be called to serve. We have been privileged to be called to be God's own managers. And that reminds us of the calling of the 12. It was not only 12 people that were following Jesus, but out of them, he called 12 to himself. Let's turn our Bible to Mark chapter 3. Mark chapter 3. Mark chapter 3 from verse 13. And it says, Jesus went up on the mountain and called to him those whom he desired, and they came to him. And he appointed 12, whom he also named apostles, so that they might be with him, and he might send them out to preach, and have authority to cast out demons. He appointed the 12, Simon, James, John, the brother of James, whom he named Boanerges, that is, sons of thunder, Andrew and Philip and Bartholomew and Matthew and Thomas and James the son of Alphaeus and Thaddeus and Simon the Canaanian and Judas Iscariot who betrayed him. So, out of many, Jesus appointed the 12. And that reminds me also of Luke's Gospel chapter 5. Right from verse 11, from verse 4. Luke chapter 5 from verse 4. And you find what happens there again. That Jesus had come, to speak and had used the boat of the fishermen that had met at the lake of Gennesaret. So from verse 4, when he had finished speaking, He said to Simon, put out into the deep and let down your nets for a catch. And Simon answered, Master, we toiled all night and took nothing. But at your word, I will let down the nets. And when they had done this, they enclosed a large number of fish, and their nets were breaking. They signaled to their partners in the other boat to come and help them. And they came and filled both the boats so that they began to sink. But when Simon Peter saw it, he fell down at Jesus' knees, saying, Depart from me, for I am a sinful man, O Lord. For he and all who were with him were astonished at the catch of fish that they had taken. And so also were James and John, sons of Zebedee, who were partners with Simon. And Jesus said to Simon, Do not be afraid. From now on, you will be catching men. And when they had brought their boats to land, they left everything and followed him. In the first instance, among many fishermen, Jesus identified these two people and made use of their boat. They accepted that offer. He made use of their boat, and subsequently, he started to engage with them. Put back into the deep for a catch. And they obeyed, even though that did not quite work well with the style of, catching fish. That was better done at night. But this one, because Jesus was there, they caught plenty of fish. Subsequently, they left everything and followed him. So what a privilege that they had an encounter with Jesus, and then he called them to be fishers of men, and they followed him. And if you have to turn your Bible again to 1 Peter chapter 2. 1 Peter chapter 2, from verse 9. 1 Peter chapter 2. Is somebody there to read? Pardon?
A royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people belonging to God, that you may declare the praises of him who called you out of darkness into his wonderful light. Once you are not a people, but now you are the people of God. Once you had not received mercy, but now you have received mercy.
Thank you. I think you know that from that beginning, that conjunction is very important. But, which is to actually contrast with what had gone before. Unlike those who could not get in because of their disobedience and hardness of heart. But you are a chosen people. And I think it's always important that we are mindful of who we are. We are mindful of our identity. That the calling of God is upon our life. And that should inform whatever we do as managers of God's business. May the Lord help us. May the Lord help us. I wonder sometimes whether some people feel that the ministry is just their own. They call themselves, and therefore they can dictate and determine everything around it. Let us be careful to know that it is a privilege. We have been called a privilege to serve. And there are many people out there. That's the more reason why I believe that even when people want to become pastors or come into the ordained ministry, it is important that they know that they have been called. It's not just somebody pushing them. Because if you are not called and you are in it, you may also find that you get to a point when you feel like running out or going back. It's important to know. And when you know that it is a privilege to have been called, I believe that how to manage that business will become very important for you, because you then have to guard it jealously. You have to guard it jealously because it is a trust that has been given to you. I pray that we shall not fail him. Amen. The second thing from this passage, which I already referred to, is that we are called to occupy until he comes. So God's business requires being occupied for result. Because by the time of his return, there shall be a report that shall be given. So it is a result-oriented business or action. And I want to ask of you, what preoccupies you in this business of the kingdom? What preoccupies you? When the owner of the business has said to you, take this and occupy until I come. Engage until I come. What are you engaging in? What are you engaging in? There are all kinds of people in the church and all kinds of things. Some people, when they get to the church, they begin to engage in terrible things. Even with members of the church. Some people collude, even with church members, to begin to exploit the church, even financially. And that is why some people cannot be trusted. Some people will say, oh, this pastor is a good preacher. He's a good preacher. But that is all that you can say about it. He doesn't live according to what he preaches. That destroys everything about him. Ah, this one is a good preacher. Ó kàn jẹ́ pé obìnrin ti bàjẹ́. Kí ló tún kù? This one is a good preacher, but you cannot trust him. So what are you occupied with? What preoccupies you in what you do? And is your business a result-oriented one? Let us be mindful of the fact that as Paul left Titus, we are left to continue with the unfinished business. And there has to be a focus. Because there shall be a report back. So we should constantly remind ourselves about the purpose of our calling. I found that the reason so many people nowadays, make a mockery of their calling is that they are not quite clear about the purpose of coming into the ministry. If your purpose is not clear, then you cannot deliver effectively. All you will ever see or say is the negative things happening in the ministry. But because you didn't feel, convinced about the calling in the first instance, you say, I thought that coming to this ministry, I will have money quickly now. What is happening? Why is it not happening? All kinds of things will begin to happen. People will say, or somebody will say, well, I thought that they would have preferred me a canon by now. Or they would have preferred me an archdeacon by now. But you should be asking yourself, are you satisfied with what you are doing now? Is that what you believe God has called you to do? So, what preoccupies you? It's a very important one. Many years ago, I was, shall I say a junior pastor, or I was, I made a canon. And then the opportunity came to be made an archdeacon. So the bishop was kind enough to call me and offer that I should become an archdeacon. He said it in a way that it was obvious. So I thanked the bishop for it. And I begged him that he should not allow me to be an archdeacon yet. One of the things on my mind then was the fact that, in fact, the opportunity of ministry I had at that time, I was pretty satisfied that that was what God wanted me to be doing. Because virtually everywhere, whatever it was that needed to be done, I was doing even without the title. And I knew that once the title came, that it might even limit what I could do with that. I was clear about it. So I pleaded with my bishop to allow me more time. Let me run around more. Let me serve more. So some people heard about it. They say, is this man crazy? Say, come and become archdeacon. You are thinking twice. Should have jumped at it. So one of my classmates who heard it said, are you that stupid? I said, yes, I'm very stupid. That I knew that what God has called me to do, I was doing it, and that was what was preoccupying my mind. But whereas some people were, queuing up, they wanted to become archdeacon very, very quickly. I was not anxious about it. But I was rather satisfied that I was preoccupied with enough of opportunities for ministry that being an archdeacon would just be, for me, might even limit me at that particular time. I'm not saying that if your bishop is calling you to be an archdeacon, you should reject. But the point here is that you should know what exactly is preoccupying you. Are you so desperate that all you are thinking about is your preferment, rather than whether you are meeting the business, whether you are managing the business effectively well? So what is the motivation for the work? Is it the self or the owner of the business? Is it that your desire in managing the business is to please the master or just to please yourself? Let us be careful about this. I pray that the Lord will help us. Amen. Number 4, increase in the business. If the business is going to blossom, then we must carefully look for what would help it, what is required for the ministry to blossom. It's very important for us. You know that this man, when he gave them the minas, he gave to each according to his ability. It's a very important one. And then, when they took it, each of them went to do something with it. But in the end, we found that somebody went, and then by the time came for him to respond, to put back what he received, he came back, he has gained 10 more. 10 more. Amazing. He has gained 10 more. Another person, he came back, he has gained 5 more. Another person came back. What did he come back with? He came back with complaints. My Lord Bishop, look at where you put my friends, and look at where you have put me. Who are they? It's because the bishop did not like me. Well, I met 10 people there. You should have encouraged me and put me in a better place. Let me tell you something. That person, if you put him in a better place, he will run it down. That's what he will do. Somebody had 10, he added 10. Another person had 5, he added 5. This man who had just 1, he could not even add 1. All he was preoccupied with was complaint. And then he just put the thing in a place where he could not even function at all. So I think it must be our focus, our calling as managers of God's business to be effective, that is, result-oriented, to be impactful, to have impact wherever we go. Last week we had our clergy school, and I was saying to my clergy as well that wherever you are, the moment you get to that parish, that is the moment your work starts. Don't think that it can take another 4 years or 5 years or 2 years before the bishop will remove me. What if the bishop has a reason to remove you in the next 3 months? Would you have left your own print in the sand in that place? Even that 3 months, would you have been able to say, well, I was there for 3 months, I have managed to do something? Or the first 3 months is going to be 3 months of complaint and grumbling? It's a better place. It ought to be a better place. Why has he not sent me to the cathedral or Remo or somewhere else? Why has he sent me here? Where they have sent you, what impact are you going to make? They said to Titus, appoint elders in every town. So there was an assignment. So as an effective manager of God's business, what is your focus? Do you get to a parish and prayerfully pray and begin to itemize what under God you believe you want to work on and achieve there? Or you just get there, you are just running up and down, up and down, up and down, and at the end of the day, you have sweat so much that you have almost lost your whole energy and you cannot deliver on anything. Be very, very careful. May the Lord help us. May the Lord help us. May the Lord help us. They said some people are like fire extinguishers. Have you heard that before? And there are some people, some priests are like that. That instead of getting to a place and turning it around, once they get there, every fire in that place, they will almost kill completely. If the bishop is not alert enough, before you know it, they will have destroyed the whole place before they remove him. So it's important that in managing God's business, we have a clear focus. For Titus, it was to appoint elders in every town. Number 5, manager shall give account. That's a very important one. And that's what we find in that same chapter 19, verse 15. When he returned, having received the kingdom, he ordered these servants to whom he had given the money to be called to him, that he might know what they had gained by doing business. I think many times we are used to preaching to people about the fact that there shall be judgment, or there shall be recompense, or that we shall also report or give account. But do you ever think about your own to give account? To give account of whatever it is that you have done. The vestry meeting, which is always an opportunity to reflect on the previous year and to look at what we are doing and where we want to go. I know that sometimes some people, try to cut corners around it. That there is even nothing to deliver, nothing to present. And the expectation is that your report would also be sent forward, move forward, so that we know exactly what you are doing. Some people are missing that opportunity. I pray that it will not be so for us in the name of Jesus. So Paul, in writing to the Corinthians in his second letter, says that all of us shall stand before the judgment throne. Abi? And we shall give account for what everybody has done in the flesh. Be it good or... Very important. That everyone shall give account. So if you are managing God's business, be mindful of the fact that the time shall come when you would also give account. No wonder Paul says, woe is me if I do not preach the gospel. So already Paul is committed. There is a purpose for which he has been called, because he will render account. Therefore, he has to put in everything that is possible. Paul will even say, I am all things to all men, in order that I might by all means save some. So Paul again was very clear that he had a mission. And the mission was to ensure that people are saved and brought into the kingdom. So very, very important that we know that we shall give account of our business. Number 6, stewards of the mystery are also called to be trustworthy. If we are to be effective managers, then we are called to be trustworthy. Let's look at 1 Corinthians chapter 4. Somebody would like to read that to us. 1 Corinthians chapter 4.
So then, men ought to regard us as servants of Christ and as those entrusted with the secret things of God. Now it is required that those who have been given the trust must prove faithful. I care very little if I am judged by you.
Okay. I think this is how one should regard us. as servants of Christ and stewards of the mysteries of God. I think very important. How people ought to regard us. As what? Very, very important. So moreover, it now says in verse 2, it is required of stewards that they be found trustworthy. It is required that they be found trustworthy. So stewards are to be trustworthy in whatever they are doing. So if we are to be effective managers, then we must be trustworthy, because we are to be seen as servants of God who are working on behalf of God, and then whatever we do, we must be trustworthy. And Mark chapter 4, verse 11 says, and he said to them, to you has been given the secret of the kingdom of God, but to those outside, everything is imparable. So, what has been given to you? The secret of the kingdom. And if that has been given to us, then we are called upon to safeguard it. We are called upon to be trustworthy. The emphasis in this passage is not on the size of the gift, but on the appropriate stewardship. That is the point. So, you may, whatever your gift, however little, what is important is appropriate stewardship. How you use what God has given you. How you actually manage it. Is it in such a way that it will be to the glory of God, or just for your own personal advantage? Sometimes that is how people use the ministry, or how they see it. I tell you that if you are sincere about managing God's business in the most honest way, God himself would also look after you. He will meet your need, however challenging things might be. Then there is a calling that there God will meet your need. Number 7, let's be mindful of the fact that the master, or if you like, God, the owner of the business, has an expectation. Somebody say, God has an expectation. And the expectation there is profit. That is the expectation. You know, the king was even complaining, sir, instead of you to just go and hide it, you could have kept it in a place where it will yield for me. If it's not going to yield, then why are you keeping it? It calls that in view of the ministry, of the instruction, to put this money to work, which we find in verse 13, this servant was disobedient and careless. He was disobedient and careless. People of God, brothers, I pray that none of you will be disobedient. And none of you will be careless. I want to urge you to re-examine your focus in ministry. And let us be careful, because some people will begin to compare themselves with other people. And when you are comparing yourself, on the altar of comparing yourself, you are losing what God has given you. So, what exactly has God given you, and how are you using it? Where are you particularly gifted in ministry? And how are you maximizing that for the glory of God in that church? How are you doing it in such a way that the Lord's name will be glorified, and you are using it to serve the people of God and His church? It's a very important one. The fear of this disciple, the fear of this man, this servant, was that his master was exerting and exploiting his situation. He said the master was exploitative, but his response was not consistent with this understanding. Whatever it was not for you to judge at that point. What was important was for you to collect your own and make something out of it. But instead of doing that, he simply went and it was, if you like, was it a protest? Bobby? He was going to, well, that's his own kind of protest, a way to protest. Well, I'll just keep it. I won't do anything with it. And well, let me be there. But about the bishop, Abi? When the bishop is ready, he will move me from there. Let me be there. And like the bishop was saying about somebody the other time, somebody gets there again. The place that you thought was dead. And then there is new life there. One of my good friends was a priest that was sent to a church very close to Newcastle in the northeast of England many years ago. Where he was before, where I first met him, he was doing very well. He's an Englishman. And after some years, so it was time for him to move on. And he discussed this with the bishop, as they do there. And there was a church that was almost dying. So the bishop thought that, okay, because of your experience, go and help us manage the process of closing down the church. So that exactly was almost like his duty. But he agreed that he would go there. The bishop was expecting that he would wind it down and then they would close the place because it was already weak. But what happened? Within 2 years, 3 years, the congregation had grown from about 10 to 150. And the church became lively that nobody could even suggest, allow the place to die anymore. So he just took it up as a challenge and rolled off his sleeves and said that we'll put in everything, bring the gospel of life. They got to a point when they will now have a service, one at 7:30, one at 9:15, and another one at 11 o'clock. The church that was said to be dying on its way out. What he received was, he received his own gift and decided to go and invest it properly. So there is expectation from us. And the expectation of the master is profit. I pray that the work of God in your hands will prosper. Amen. I pray that the work of God in your hands will prosper. Amen. It will flourish. Amen. But you know that if this is to be so, it also has to begin with us. Our life must be such that it's open even to allow God use us. But if you are somebody who is full of complaints and just agonizing all the time, I was told about somebody in a diocese not long ago, apparently because the person is related to me. So the person said, look, this man we are talking about, even if the bishop chooses to make him the dean of his cathedral, the following day, after his arrival, he will begin to complain. Abi, what more after being dean in the cathedral? He said even if they take him from where he is and take him to become dean, he was not even a canon then, no. So you can imagine just the priest being moved and then becoming a dean, which should be an exciting thing, exciting opportunity, isn't it? He said even if you make him dean, he will begin to complain the day after that one. So that means that it has become almost his symbol, his signature, that is complaining about virtually everything. So let us be careful what we allow ourselves to be taken into. If we open up ourselves and allow the Spirit of God to use us, then we can be effective managers of God's own business. My prayer is that as the Lord lives, the business of God will not die in our hands. I pray that the business of God will not die in our hands. Yeah. I do tell people in my diocese, I said, Yoruba people, oni enire kumolori, kò ṣeé ṣe kíni? Ṣé mọ̀? Àwọn tó ṣeré òṣùpá láyé àtijọ́ nìyẹn o. Pé nígbà tó bá dọ́wọ́ yín nísìnyí, if you allow it to die there, then you are not somebody that we shall identify with at all. So God has given you a trust. And it's important that you do not make it your point to begin to judge and say, why has he put me here? What you should do is get there and hit the ground running. Number 8, I want to consider the essential characteristics of a businessman. Let me ask for a minute. Can anybody tell one or two of the essential characteristics of a businessman? Of an effective businessman? Yes, anybody? Yes? Planning. Okay. Yes? Okay, looking out for opportunities. Yes? Time consciousness. Yes? Profit making. Pardon? Willing to take risk. Yes? Steadfastness. Innovation. Very particular about good results. Commitment and risk taking. Must be faithful. Goal setting. Endurance. Well, so many that you have mentioned. But let me also stress, add one or two others. One is to serve his customers' needs. Are you there? I hope all these things are not distracting us. However good your business is, if your customers are complaining, it is not good enough. So which means that one of the things that the businessman constantly reflects on is, what is the customer asking for? And that means he's got to be involved in getting feedback. There is going to be constant evaluation. You evaluate the product that you are giving out. You also evaluate what now they call customer's service. Are you with me? Now, if your product is good and the customer service is poor, you may actually find that you undermine your business. It's a very important one. Yes, this bread is good. We want to buy the bread. And you get there and say, I want to buy bread. The man who is to deliver the bread says, I don't know. What are you looking for? Okay, mumbo no. And then he's spending time doing some other things. And after some time, I said, I want to buy bread. Okay, at the end of the day, when he gets the bread is good, but tomorrow, do you think you'll be excited to come back? Brothers, we are talking about effective management of God's business. The products that we are selling, but we are the servicemen. So if the serviceman is not right with the people, not doing the right thing, doing it the right way, you know that the product can be at risk. Are you sure you know that? May God help us. That's why it's important for you to actually evaluate yourself very well. I was told some time ago about a particular pastor that the people wanted him to go by all means. And then we asked, why? Is it because he's not doing well? The way he talks to people, we don't like it. And you know the people said, they insisted that he must go. They didn't say that it's not, you cannot do work. They are not even talking about the work again. His personality has now overshadowed the product that he was supposed to sell. And that is giving a very wrong impression. So be careful about your life. Be careful about what? Be careful about what? So if you're talking about effective management of God's business, then it is important that we are also engaged in constant and regular evaluation to inform better performance. And then to inform our profit and the wider reach. Where is this product getting to? Is it reaching out to people? How is our ministry serving people in the various sectors of the society? So it's important to actually evaluate that. If you are managing God's business effectively, how is it reaching the youths? What are the youths of your church saying about you? Somebody they said recently said, well, when they have vigil in the church, he doesn't come. But when it's time to say the grace, they will go and knock his door, so he will come and say the grace. That's a good recommendation, isn't it? So, what also are the needy, those who are in need in the church? What are they saying about you? What are they saying about the word that you dispense? There is need to have constant evaluation. Feedback from the people. If you are going to be an effective manager, you must get feedback. You have been in this parish for 1 year. What are they saying? Do you have a way of collecting feedback or doing evaluation? Genuine. Don't let the people not put their name. And if they write and they criticize you, will you be willing to take it on and then adjust yourself? An effective manager must be willing to do that. Otherwise, if you are going to say, who wrote this one about me? I will place a curse on him. Then you are not ready for the job. You are not ready to be an effective manager of the business. May the Lord help us. Finally, I want to ask you to revisit the ordinal. You know, two things that people don't often realize is that your work has a job description. Do you know? Your work has a job description. Number one, go and look at the license that the bishop has given you. And two, you have done priesthood or you have done ordination here this year. Next Sunday. We had our own last Sunday. You will see a lot that the bishop is asking of the priest. And that is telling us all that is expected. Even to the point of asking, will you equip yourself further and read well about things that will help your work? Some people, after they have finished their training, they have forgotten about reading. So, go back to the ordinal. Read it prayerfully over and over again and ask yourself, are you there? And these things, are they manifesting in your ministry? So those things are very important. And above all, I want to say that whatever it is to be a good manager, you must know that prayer is very important. Bí Paul ń gbìn, bí Apollo ń bomi ní, láìsí ìbùkún Ọlọ́run kọ́. So to be an effective manager, we need the blessing of God upon the work we do. So what challenges are we facing today in the effective performance and management of the business of God in our hands? Whatever the challenges, I think we need God to help us overcome them. We need prayer to sustain us. But last but not the least, we need the manual to guide us. And that manual is the Word of God. Whatever cannot be established there, throw it away. Whatever cannot be established there, throw it away. And one of the books I have written, I don't know if anyone of you has read it, Celebrating the Anglican Heritage. And part of what I'm saying is that all that we need to be able to function effectively and manage God's business well, God has deposited in our church, is with us. But you need the heart that is warm to be able to make use of them. The prayer book that you read and you feel some people say it's dull. Some other people will use the same prayer book. It is revival. It shall be well with you. Amen. Brethren, as I conclude, I want to ask, if this were to be your own business, what would you do to improve it? If this were to be your own business that you have borrowed to set up, what would preoccupy you? Would you be thinking about constant improvement? Or you just say once you have done it once, that is it? Why will you not consider the same for this business that God has entrusted into your hands? It's important to be sure that we run this business in line with the scripture and the prayer book. Not deceiving people, but honestly, to bring salvation and progress to the people. And let's not forget that the manager will give account, and that must never be forgotten. And that the business is entrusted to us. We only need to occupy until he comes. May the Lord bless us with the grace of steadfastness. May the Lord bless us with the grace of diligence. May the Lord bless us with the grace of faithfulness. That the work he has committed to our charge and to our care will not fail. And that we too will not fail. That we will not put ourselves in the place of the owner of the business, but rather that we will be faithful to him who has called us, and that we will deliver in the name of Jesus Christ. May grace of God continue to avail for us. It is well in the name of Jesus. Thank you very much for listening. So I suspect there may be one or two questions or observations or clarifications. I think we still have some time to engage at that level. So it's not just me who has been doing all the talking, but we can also engage. Yes? So let's start with you.
Thank you, my Lord. In the course of your lecture, you made a reference to a point where Jesus Christ called his disciples. He did not force them. It was a gentle call, and they agreed to be his disciples. I want to ask a question. The question is, for priests to make a disciple or to make disciples, what are the things that are expected to be seen in him for someone or some people to agree that, because I believe a disciple is someone that believes totally in a person. What are the qualities that should be seen in the life of a priest before someone will voluntarily say, I want to become a disciple?
Well, if you like, let me put it in a very simple manner. I will say that you just have to be a priest. Did you hear me? Go and be the priest that you have been called to be. That is all. If that is what you really are, then surely the others will follow. If I just referred you to the ordinary, when by the time they are doing it again at ordination, please follow it carefully. You will find there that the bishop will be asking that, are you going to fashion your life and that of your household after the word of God? Of course, you will be answering what? Yes. You see, if indeed the ministry, you have accepted it and you are going to preach and also live by that, it is the people who will be observing that truly this man is a man of God. So if you are true to your calling, that is the first thing. Live it out. Don't just preach, but live according to it. Then you have been called to search for those who are lost those who are dying and be there to revive them. I think once you begin to do it, in fact, sometimes it's not, you don't have to go and say, come and be my disciple. If you are doing it naturally, you will just find that people will begin to move and flow in that regard. I think it's very important. Just go and be who you have been called to be. In one of the stations where I served, in fact, if when I say that, I suffered there. I suffered there. But today, my joy, every time I look back, is the fact that among the people, we have produced about 7 or more clergy. So for me, each time I remember that place, I say, maybe that was part of why God sent me there. It just became natural that those young people will flock towards me. We were just moving and, they were just taking it and taking it. In fact, one of them I have invited to come and do Bible study in my synod this year. He's an archdeacon now. So we were just, and I was not doing it so that I would say, come and become a priest or anything. No. But it was just happening. And what was I doing? I think I was just doing ministry. I don't think I was actually setting out in any particular way that, is this person I want to... No. I think I was just doing the ministry, and somehow you just find that it was just happening, that relationship, developing, work, and all these things were coming together. So I would say, surely do the work, and you relate when God is also there, and you are honest about it. Just be who God has called you to be among his people. You will find that disciple or discipling will begin to take place. Yes? Any other? Okay, yes. Let's start here.
Thank you, my Lord, sir. Thank you, my Lord, sir. I just want to ask, what is your own perspective to some gainsaying that some people believe when they were called, and maybe they are not yielded to the call immediately, and maybe their child, wife, or business was being touched in a negative way due to untimely answering the call. Did you believe that? Or let me see, what is your perspective, my Lord? Thank you, sir.
No, that one I don't know now. I didn't experience that one. But I know of people who claim to be their experience. And they said that, the Lord has been calling them, but they have been holding on, to the things that they liked, and they had reasons not to want to yield. And it was only when they found that things were beginning to turn around negatively that maybe people prayed for them, or people were counseling them, or God was speaking to them, and they begin to realize that it was because they hadn't responded to God's call. Eventually, people like that will respond, and then they also find that they have peace in their mind, and they're beginning to serve God, and the Lord is there with them. In fact, I have 1 or 2 people now talking to me about that, being their experience. And now they are so desperate to now respond. But they feel that it's because they have not responded over all this while that they are not at peace. So some people have that experience. I cannot dispute it. It's their experience. It's not necessarily my own. My own was that I had another way to go. But God called me back, and I chose to abandon that other way and then take it up. And I feel that this is where God has called me, and he has been demonstrating his faithfulness ever since then. So, but those who have that experience, I also give it to them that that's their experience. And then I rejoice with them that finally they have listened and they have responded to the call.
Thank you, my Lord. I have 2 points that I want you to react to, sir. Number 1 has to do with self-evaluation in the ministry. The second one has to do with the concept of being yourself in the ministry. Let me just take it briefly. The first one, self-evaluation. I don't know what the church is putting in place has been put in place by the church for self-evaluation? Because you discover that, just like Baba said yesterday, you had big names, maybe because of one thing or the others, they just faded away and they went. Simply because maybe there are no evaluation methodologies in our church. I don't know what you will say about self-evaluation in that one. The second one, my Lord, quickly, has to do with concept of being yourself. You are English trained, and our Baba, the bishop, is elite and business trained men of God. For people coming from the grassroots, we have this kind of challenge of being yourself, especially, and that is what is leading a lot into advanced hypocrisy. Even if you are not careful, if you are leading a service, if the bishop is there, if care is not taken, the mistake that you are not expected to make, you make it. I'm talking of reality. Even that's why many a times when we conduct the service at the dignity level, by the time his lordship enters, the tempo of service changes.
So you don't want his lordship to come.
And my Lord, if I must say the truth, sir, this aspect of being yourself is as affecting the production of God's business. What advice will you give us so that this will also serve as impetus for the business development? Thank you, sir.
The first question was about
Self-evaluation.
Self-evaluation. Well, where is this self-evaluation now? Self-evaluation or evaluation of a kind. I think one of the challenges that we have, which I think we have to look into, especially for us as a church, is to actually see how we can help the clergy to do evaluation. In the Church of England, where I also had the opportunity to serve, one of the things we used to do is to have what they call spiritual director. And apart from that, once in every 18 to 24 months, every priest will have the opportunity of meeting somebody else that you would have filled a form that would be sent to you from the bishop's office, a form that would have helped you to sit down on your own, reflect over your ministry, over your life, over your family, over what you think is going well or what is not going well, and which the diocese will have appointed somebody for you. You will send that form to him. He will read your form, whatever you have filled there, and you would agree a date when you will discuss with them. And then they'll be able to look at all this, and then they will also write a report about you, so that the things you have done successfully well will be identified. What you consider to be a particular challenge would also be identified, and the solutions will be noted there, so that there will be a way to work with the leadership of the church. Well, here now, what I try to do, and I'm not sure I've been successful enough about it, but we're trying to do something, is to ensure I've started with my archdeacons that once in 2 years, at least, we will do a bit of evaluation with each person, and possibly with their wife. They will have had a similar form to also feel, to also reflect on what they have been doing, and then to accept where they have done well, then to query where they have not done well, with the view to finding solutions, so that the next time they are coming, then they will have had a way of looking at it. And I think really, if you ask me, my goal is to get to a point where for every person, I can find people to help me review them, so that the fear that you are coming to the bishop will not be there. But where you can be honest about your experience, and then the church can also be advised as to how to help you better. I hope you are following that. So it's a lot of things that we need to do that way. So, but if it's about you, what I used to do when I was a priest, what I used to do was to actually do a pro forma for myself and give to people in my church. Personally, I was doing that. And I would say, you know, don't put your name. So they will help me to actually give some feedback that at the end of the day, I will also collate and I will prayerfully study them, both sides, study what they have said and what I think I'm doing well. And on my own, I will also take time. Well, you are all married, I believe. Sometimes too, you know, listening to your wife can help a great deal. So that they can actually say, that was done well, oh. I'll be that one, maybe you should not be there. I think a combination of these three, plus your own time of, you know, taking reflection, I think can also help. But self-evaluation is very important. And when we find that we are weak in a particular point, it shouldn't be something that would be too much of a big problem for us to go to somebody else and say, this aspect, I think I have some challenge there. How can you help me? You may find genuine advice. And that is what I want to ask of you. That is a pity that many times clergy don't feel safe with themselves. Because the people that you think you are opening yourself up to will be the man who will have something to fight you tomorrow. Which is a pity. Ordinarily, you should be able to go to your brother and say, brother, pray for me, oh, this is my problem. And he should see it as a privilege to hear you and really pray for you or encourage you. But it's not to use that same information to fight you. It should not be so. But it's a pity, I think for people, so many people, that is their experience. So maybe sometimes, this is a strange one. If you cannot trust a pastor, then trust somebody who is not a pastor who can be honest with you and can pray with you and support you. Now, about being yourself, I think that is something everybody needs to bear in mind. And that is the reason why, you know, with the grace of God upon our life, we should learn that from the beginning that once you are leading under God, you are leading. Prepare yourself and do what is right. As I tell my clergy, if you know what is right and you are doing it, the bishop will not bother at all. The bishop also is there to worship. If you make any genuine mistake, it's a genuine mistake, the bishop will correct you. But once you are not confident, you are not sure you have done the right thing, then you will just be moving from one mistake to another, especially because you have not prepared for that thing. If you have prepared yourself and there is a slip, people will understand it, they will correct you. But once you have not done what you should do, in fact, the moment the bishop comes now, you begin to mess it up. I mean, this one I remember very well when I was dean of the theological college. Once I came into service like this, some students will begin to make error, mistakes, and I said, it's not necessary. God has placed you in charge for that moment. Just calm yourself down. Prepare for that and do what God has asked you to do. If you make a genuine mistake, afterwards, they would also correct you in love. But it is important that you are seen to have prepared yourself and to be ready to do what is right. It is when you have not done what is right that now the bishop comes, especially if he's looking at you, hey. And then you begin the words of the wise, and you begin to mess it up. You should just calm down, especially as a leader of worship, and lead the people the right way. Don't do anything because you want to impress the bishop. I think you should learn not to do that. Do just what is the right thing. Because the moment you think you want to impress the bishop, and that is not your style, but now you are doing it because you want to impress the bishop, you run into mistakes. But once you have been taught what is right, take it on board, prepare for your service, and do it well. You'll be amazed that you just do it and everybody will say, thank God we have worshipped. So it's important that you learn to be just who you are But if you allow the Spirit of God to refine and reform you, you find that what you give out will bring blessings to the people of God. It shall be well with us. Time too long. Can we take the last one, sir? Okay. All right.
Thank you, sir. My favorite hymn, Christians seek not yet repose. Hear thy guardian angels say, to in the midst of foes, watch and pray. Sir, as a person, have you felt the wind of these foes in your ministry before? Or your ministry is just good plus good times good, all over good equals to good, good?
Thank you, Lord, for giving me the opportunity to ask this question. My Lord, I would like you to throw more light on the word restitution and what are the process to be taken. Thank you, my Lord.
Well, let's start with the first question. Well, I don't know how you define whether the ministry has been good, everything is good, and is good. For me, I would simply say everything has been what God has wanted it to be. Are you following me? I have never been particularly anxious about enemies because I try not to focus on the enemies, but focus on the one who has called me. Sometimes I find that people become too conscious of enemies. You make so much about them that you yourself, you are not moving forward. Everything, you find that there is enemy around you. Everything is about enemy. Even when genuine mistakes are being made, that you should accept that, I made this mistake, or you will simply put it down to the enemy. So if that is the approach, you will find that where you even need to check yourself, you won't be checking yourself. Everything is enemy. But what I just know is that I've had all kinds of experience, but somehow I just find that God has also been keeping me. I've been in moments of absolute want, no money at all, not even 50 naira to buy food after service. And yet I had a family to feed. I've been in situations like that, but somehow God also helped us navigate it. I've been in a situation whereby we started a Sunday service with everybody joyful, running all over the place, finished the service. My bishop came, went back. Everything seemed to have gone well. In the evening, I went out for open air crusade with family and joy and everything going well. And we went to sleep. Before the following morning, my son was dead. But in all, God has been there. So, a lot that I can also say. So I would just say, well, whatever we are, God has been there. But I have never allowed any of those to distract me or to make an enemy out of every situation. I just try to check myself and examine what I'm doing, and I ask God for His mercy to continue faithfully. The other one about restitution, if you are looking at Zacchaeus, for instance, I think Zacchaeus did realize that what he needed to do was to put his life right. The essence of restitution when people talk about this is to put things right. And that is also repentance. The problem comes when we become so mechanical about it. And then we become, we build a lot of doctrine around it. And you'll be asking yourself, where does it stop? The Bible says that the sacrifices of God are a broken and contrite heart God will not despise. So if indeed your heart is broken for the Lord, for whatever you have committed, and you believe that there are some of it that you can put right, yes, God has given you the grace, put it right. But there are some that there is just no way of putting it right. For instance, if you have committed abortion, how are you going to do the restitution? Go and undo it, you know. So I'm just using that as just one example, that there is nothing more you can do than to, again, come before the Lord and truly ensure that your heart is broken and you have offered yourself to God. And He is the only one who can help you out of that. But if you continue to carry the guilt all your life, you may never move forward. May God help us. Thank you very much indeed.
A better applause for, you know. I want to thank God for the lecture we have received and the lecturer.